Thanks so much for coming. Welcome, everyone. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Marcus Taylor. I'm head of department, and we also have here, we have Barbara Lalonde, departmental manager, and Kari Rosenmalen, our undergraduate administrator. And so the three of us are here, firstly, to give you a little bit of information about what's going on in the fall term. As you're probably aware, things have been a little bit disrupted at Queen's, at DEVS, and life in general with the unfortunate pandemic situation. So I got some information to give to you about what we're doing in the fall term, and then we can just open it all up to questions, comments, general discussion, and so forth. I hope that sounds reasonable. So one thing you can do is I was just mentioning, and I think everyone has very kindly muted their mic just so there isn't background noise. If when I'm talking you want like more elaboration and so forth, you can put a comment in the chat. And I'm guessing most of you are very familiar with Zoom as an architecture, but if you sort of look, at least for me on a Mac, if I look down, I can see a chat symbol down below. I click on that, and then there's a chat room on the right. Perhaps, Barbara, you could just type something so people can see one comment in there. And that's really, you know, if you put questions in there as we're going along, then I can see them there and answer them, etc. So if I'm talking about something and you want further information, probably best to use that than try to unmute, sort of interrupt and go along. And then I'll when we come to the end, we can just do open chat and discussion where you can either put comments in the chat. You see Barbara's added a comment there, and so forth. So once again, welcome. I'm really sorry that the end of term was so disrupted. And clearly, many of you would have found your courses suddenly rapidly transferred online, and the sort of forms of evaluation and assessment at times changed or curtailed in order to deal with the fact that we couldn't see each other face to face. So since then, there has been, as you can imagine, an unending series of meetings at every level in the university about what's going on in fall term and the academic year ahead. And as head of department, I've been present in so many of those and parts of the discussions and debate around that. You're probably aware that Queen's, like pretty much every other university across Ontario, has suggested that the fall term will be delivered outside of some very special programs remotely. And of course, DEVS is part of that. So what I want to talk a bit about today is what that means, what it means for you guys, what it means for us, what kind of options do we have. And I want to talk about some of the ways that we're trying to create flexibility and other options within this, including things such as mounting courses in the spring for those that are interested to get some more face-to-face contact and teaching time. So I'll talk about that as well. So, you know, as you know, we're going remote in the fall. That does not preclude students coming to Kingston if they have rented houses and rooms and so forth. But what it does generally mean is that there's going to be no face-to-face teaching. So content has moved online. Now in DEVS, we're quite fortunate that many of our courses already have an architecture through arts and science online, so that we're really well set up for many courses to offer them in an online format without any disruption. In fact, you know, courses such as DEVS 220, DEVS 221, DEVS 240, DEVS 260, DEVS 280, and I'll talk about these specifically. We're already going to be taught as online versions to complement our in-class versions. But now those architectures will be the main way of taking those courses, okay? So, and other courses are going to be transferred into a remote format. Now, one of the key things for this, and the university has suggested this, is that these courses will be largely have elements to them which are what they call asynchronous. So that means that you can do the components of those courses in your own time throughout the week. Some of our courses will still have designated meeting times and times when we hope you'll be available to tune into a lecture and so forth. But the majority of our courses are going to be orientated so that you won't have specific course times or specific tutorial times, but there's a lot more flexibility and structure. And we've done this because we understand that people's timetables are going to be rather different. They're going to be, you know, there's not going to be the certainty that each of you can be in a quiet, undisturbed space for a given time, particularly given that some of you might be at other time zones, either other parts of Canada or globally, and so forth. So the kinds of courses as we move on online over the fall are generally going to be built to give that kinds of flexibility. And that means changes to how they're organized and ordered. You know, there's not going to be a traditional 2-hour lecture followed by 1-hour tutorial where, I mean, we're in the process. It's too early to talk specifics about these, but many of our courses that are going remote will have sort of video lectures in smaller parts with tasks and things to do, discussion forums, and maybe some options to meet in Zoom groups for discussion and tutorials, etc., but not in the same way as on class. And this is to make sure that it's equal to everybody, no matter what time zone that they're coming in for, no matter what their internet access, no matter what other disruptions that they may face in getting quiet time for classrooms. So this is the broad aspect that we're going for, that we're looking in the fall. But just to note that many of our courses will be offered that are already formatted for this. So these are courses such as DEVS 220, Intro to Indigenous Studies, DEVS 260, our Globalization, Gender and Development course, DEVS 280, Global Engagement, DEVS 361, which is our development planning and policy advocacy course. All of those were already created for online remote platforms. So those would be, you know, a bedrock of courses that are already set and ready for this. Other courses that you might be doing, such as DEVS 230 or DEVS 340, will have this remote formatting, in which we're now at this very moment over the next few months transferring them so that they'll be available for students, etc., in the fall. So I'll talk also to note that there's a few new courses. One of the courses that's going to be organized in this remote way is actually going to be taught by Professor David McDonald, and it's called COVID in the Global South. So it's a course specifically put on to understand the impacts of COVID-19 within developing world countries. You're going to look at questions from health to economy, through to impacts upon migration and so forth. So it's going to be a really interesting course that's sort of working in real time to understand the impacts on countries across the developing world. So look out for that one. I'll note that the timetables will be released before too long, so you'll be able to see all the courses and options, and we'll give you those dates shortly. The other courses that we're offering include, for example, a new course, and this is one thing that's worth noting. We've just hired in the last year 2 new professors within DEVS. So we're going to be expanding course offerings once again. One of those, Dr. Bernadette Resurrection, is a noted scholar of Southeast Asia, and she works on all aspects from livelihoods, gender, climate change mitigation, and natural resource management, disaster recovery and relief. And Dr. Resurrection has got more than 2 decades of experience working for some of the biggest international organizations there are. She joins us from the Stockholm Environment Institute, but she's also done projects over for Oxfam, for World Resources, for World Bank and Asian Development Bank. So she brings a major amount of experience of sort of the global policy environment into our courses. One of the courses that she will be doing in the winter term will be for the moment at DEVS 292, development in practice, where she will, and some of you might have taken that this year with Roberto Kwan, but this is going to be run by Dr. Resurrección, and this is really going to be focused on skills building and knowledge for those interested in the policy aspects of development in practice. And she is also going to be teaching a course in the spring, and I'll come to that in a minute. The other hire that we have is wonderful. It's Dr. Celeste Pedri-Spade that's really going to boost up our Indigenous Studies programming. It's a hire that's joint with the Language, Literatures and Cultures Department. And Dr. Pedri-Spade will be offering a remote course, 300 level course in the fall on the decolonial struggle. So she's focused on questions there, and she's joined us from Laurentian University. So we're going to be expanding our number of courses with these new faculty coming in. So there's a lot going on. I've mentioned spring a couple of times, and I know that spring is not normally a term that we've offered courses in. This year will be exceptional in that respect, because we understand that with full term being online, there may be people that would be interested in taking some in-person courses in this spring term. So spring term runs from, May, it's beginning of May, for 6 weeks. It's a compressed term, 6 weeks into mid-June. It's an ideal one for those, among others, there's many students that I know I've talked to in the past that stay in Kingston to work at camps for school kids. Some of you might have had my own kids in camps if you've been working in this. So before the camps start, there's that wonderful period of about 6-7 weeks, etc. We're offering the ability to do 200-300 level courses here, wherever you are in your DEVS curriculum and progression through. These will be options to you. We'll have 2 courses, brand new courses we're putting on, so you could do the 2 of them together. So for those that are able to stick around in Kingston this time, this is really unparalleled opportunity. One of them is on trade, investment, and global environment, taught by Dr. Kyla Tianhara, who's our Canada Research Chair, and she's offering that course. So it's a DEVS 300 level course. And the other one will be from Dr. Bernadette Resurrección, our new hire, and that is going to be on climate change and disaster relief. So these 2 courses will be in the spring. We have a question there that will we be able to take spring courses if we are graduating? I think you're able to take them, but to be clear, if you want to graduate on the normal timeline of graduating, you will need to have made sure you complete your degree requirements at the end of the winter term. So I wouldn't be looking to take these for credit if you're graduating, because it would delay the date you get your graduation. Barbara, am I correct on that?
Yes, you are correct that any courses that are taken in May and June actually go into the next academic year. So they would be part of the 2021-2022 academic year. So if you were a 4th year student and took them, you wouldn't be able to graduate at the June convocation. You would go to the fall in November, assuming that you needed them to complete your degree.
Now, of course, if you are interested, for example, Dr. Tianhara is teaching a DEVS 492 seminar on similar questions about green growth, etc. So if you're a graduating student and were keen on that sort of trade, investment, environment, great to target doing her DEVS 492 seminar when those options come out. You can study with her. So that's the idea of the spring. The idea of the spring is particularly the university has made some recommendations that students think about their workload in the fall term. Sometimes doing online courses can be challenging to get used to the time management elements of it. And the Faculty of Arts and Science have recommended that students consider how many courses they take on. So for those of you in 2nd or 3rd year, you might consider doing perhaps 1 or 2 less courses in the fall, and then you could do the spring. This is why we're putting them on, to catch those up and take these brand new courses with 2 fabulous professors. So that's why we're trying it there, and we'll see whether this sticks. If this works out to be a good idea, we'll be looking to do this not just through COVID times, but to see if this is a sort of innovation which matches student preferences for some of them to do some courses in the spring. So it's an exciting opportunity. The other thing which is changing is the Cuba course. Now, many of you might know about our Cuba course, which typically is DEVS 305, Cuban Culture and Society, and it runs through the winter term where you sort of do every other week a meeting and so forth. And then in the spring, you go to Cuba itself and spend 2 weeks in Havana with Professors Dubinsky and Dr. Susan Lord from the film department. Those are the typical two professors that run this course and do all sorts of academic, educational, cultural activities in Cuba. It's a very popular and very interesting course. Now, obviously, in COVID situation, we cannot guarantee that we can get out to Cuba in the spring. So what we've done is, rather than have this double course 305, we split it into two parts. There's now DEVS 306, which is the on-campus part, which will run in the winter. And it's just be like a single 3.0 course on Cuban culture and society. And then DEVS 307, so we split it in two. That's the practical experiential learning part in Havana itself. So the point being that you can still do the background research, etc. part of it with that 306 in the winter. And we're going to try and give it as long as possible to be able to confirm whether the 307 part will run or not. If it doesn't run, then perhaps you could transfer into one of our spring courses, or there'll be another course, or we should be able to let you know in good enough time to add another winter term course or a spring term course, or one of our online courses that will be running during the summer. So we've done that obviously for flexibility reasons. We hope very much that Professor Dubinsky will be able to take another cohort over to Cuba, etc. But we can't know that with COVID situation. So that's why we split the two in half. And of course, if you take the 306 part this year and we don't go to Cuba, then you could take the 307 part next year when hopefully everything will be back running again. So that's the Cuba courses being split in two just to allow that flexibility. I should mention that our DEVS 410 and 411 placements course will be running. It is actually running at the moment, despite COVID. About a dozen students have got work-study placements in broadly Canadian NGO situations, working either around Kingston or more broadly in Canada. Evidently, the international aspect of that has shrunk back. Many students that were planning to go abroad for work study instead found Canadian-based placements, etc. And we imagine the same sort of situation will hold for the year ahead. But the course is still on. So if you're interested in a work study placement, we will be sending the information out on that soon, and you can enroll. And we're working to come up and help students find locally based work study placements. We've been very successful with it for the cohort that are in there at the moment, and we imagine we will be again. So do know that it's still going to be running, but of course, it's not imagined that by the time that this is going on, that sort of the kind of international placements will be easy. So we're really encouraging students to look for Canadian-based placements, and they exist. And like I say, about a dozen students are doing that right now. So we should be able to replicate it next year. So those are some of the main things. The other thing I'd talk about for those that are entering fourth year, we have a really great range of DEVS 492 seminars, a huge range of different topics. We're going to be letting you know these in the immediate future. We'll talk about the dates when all this information is coming out to you. Obviously, a 492 seminar has the idea of a seminar, right? That you would sort of all sit down, and this, you know, our capstone seminars, we all sit down in the same room and discuss things. I mean, it's, you know, that's what we do. Evidently, this is not quite the same when we're got to go remote. So we've created a range of 492 seminars to try and make sure that different students can get, can fit into the kind of logistical time framework of a 492 that suits them. So some of our 492s will work in the same sort of way as a traditional seminar, in that via this kind of means, Zoom, you'll be working with the professor, discussing things with other students, and they'll have a fixed time, probably, probably a 2-hour slot per week. We also have some that have split times. So for example, Dr. Eprecht's seminar has 3 1-hour meetings per week. I don't think he'll be requiring everyone to make every one, but certainly he's sort of split the timeline up so that you can come in at various points during the week. And then 2 of our 492 seminars have no set timetable. And these are the ones organized by Dr. Celeste Pedri, our new hire, who is doing a course, one on visual anthropology. And Dr. Celeste Pedri is an amazing Anishinaabe artist. She has shown her art all over North America. Amazing, works with and other artistic forms, a lot of photography as well. So this is a course in which there'll be actually a lot of sort of textual stuff, and she has been used to teaching this course in the past in a way which doesn't require specific time slots, etc., but rather has a more open flow talking, discussion, groups, etc., and task-based stuff throughout the term. So she'll be teaching like that, which means that no matter, there is no set time for the course. And also Dr. Bob Lovelace, his course on Indigenous theory will also operate in a much more flexible time flow way. So what we've done is try and create a range of different 492 experiences and topics. And you'll want to select those in the fall term with an eye not just for the topic and the professor, which is obviously good, but also for the kind of time setup it involves. Some of them are going to be like, only sign up for this if you can make Monday at 11 o'clock with a good internet connection to tune in, because it's a 492 seminar, right? It's, the demands are. Our other courses, we're not demanding that level of you have to be somewhere at a certain time. We understand things are different. But for some of those 492 seminars, we wanted to be able to offer students the opportunity to have that, because it is such a good experience to be in a seminar discussing, etc. It's going to be a bit different through Zoom, but we wanted to make sure that we're offering those students that still wanted those options, but also other options. The presumption is, of course, that in winter term that we will be back on campus and doing it in person. That's what the university tells us that we're hoping for. I mean, we'll have to be flexible if it doesn't work out that way, but that's what we're planning for. And so the 492 seminars in the winter are how they are. So that's just a little bit about the 492 seminars. Evidently, if you're in 4th year and you have constraints around internet access, accessibility, and so forth, you're very welcome to chat with myself, with Carrie, with Barbara, between now and then, and say, hey, here's my constraints. How am I going to make this work? And we'll be like, all right, what about this one? This one, this kind of course doesn't have any requirement for you to be at a particular time and place and so forth. That might work for you. So again, don't, if you're in 4th year looking at those 492 seminar options, don't hesitate to get in touch with us to say, hey, which is my best option given these kind of constraints? I mean, some people have, no problem. They have good accessibility and pretty much any time would work, because we're not, some of us not doing an awful lot else at the moment, kind of quarantining ourselves and so forth. But for those that have those constraints, don't hesitate to get in touch. All the other programming is going to be very flexible to match people's, into 200 and 300 level class, very flexible to match people's needs, etc. We're not having like graded tutorials where you need to be somewhere at someone. Some classes might set up tutorials so they expect you to come, etc., but not to the same level of your weekly tutorial and so forth. So we'd hope you to be able to be there. It will be beneficial for your education, but we understand that we need to interject a certain degree of flexibility into our pedagogy. So those are the main aspects that I wanted to emphasize. That includes, spring session. Please look out for those 2 courses. We wanted to offer something really tangible, 2 really great courses taught by really great, very popular instructors in the spring. So keep that in mind. That's a novelty, and if it works, we'll run with this kind of setup in the future potentially too. That's something. Barbara and Carrie, I think, are going to talk a little bit, or perhaps Carrie is going to talk a little bit about the kind of deadlines, etc. And then we'll just turn it open to open discussion and questions and so forth. Carrie?
Thanks, Marcus. Okay, yeah, so I was just going to talk a little bit about some of the deadlines and upcoming registration timelines. So July 24th is the day that the timetable will be available for everyone to view in Solace. Start doing some course planning at that time. August 4th, that's when you're going to be given your enrollment appointment time in Solace. So make sure to check in on the 4th. This is also the day that you can start adding courses into your shopping cart. On the 4th, when you see your appointment time, the times are going to be given again this year, as every year, by the year of your study. So 4th year students are going to be registering sometime on the day of August 17th. On the 19th of August is going to be all 3rd year students registering in their courses. And then on the 24th of August, it will be 2nd year students. So just again, check in on the 4th though to make sure what particular time you have to register for your courses.
I would just like to add to that, that if you think you are a 4th year student and you are seeing that your enrollment time is on August 19th or any other date other than August 17th, to contact Carrie at devs.student@queensu.ca, because what that means is you might be taking some summer courses to catch up and put you back on track for 4th year, or you've taken an exchange and your transfer credits haven't come through, but the system doesn't see you as a 4th year student. And this is really important because our 4th year seminars do have a limited capacity of 19 students. So if you're waiting until the 19th to register, you may not have, or you will not have, the same opportunity as other classmates to have that. So on August 4th, or anytime between August 4th and August 16th, make sure that you are checking your enrollment time. Make sure that it is on the date that it says, you're enrolling on the date that you think you should be. If you think that that's wrong, reach out to us. We will help you. We can't change the enrollment time, but what we can do is go in and get you into your 492 seminar courses in advance of that August 17th. So we will make sure that you get into your core courses when you should be able to get that. And we will be sending out a list of all of the courses, reminding you of the enrollment dates. I think our intent is to send everything out July the 7th. So you'll have that before we actually know the timetable times, but at least you'll know what courses, what term, and you can start making some plans based on that information.
Okay, so here are the July 24th timetable available in Solace, August 4th view enrollment and appointment times. So those are some of the key dates to be looking forward to. Evidently, some of our courses will be available. They won't have a scheduled timetable because they don't have a scheduled time in the fall. This is for a lecture or tutorial. So some of them will be, as it were, timetable-less because we're offering them in this remote format in which there are no specific times. There'll be weekly things to keep up with and do and make sure that you're logged in and doing, but there'll be no specific times on sort of like Monday morning lecture and Thursday afternoon tutorial. That won't exist, right? So So look out for that, and don't be surprised if the course exists but it doesn't have a specific timetable. It's because it's remote. It's this asynchronous learning style, which means that it doesn't have a specific set of times with it. That doesn't preclude instructors from saying, I'll be available for discussion on these specific times during the week, and we'll be able to have chats at those. That they might do that, but we're making sure that our courses are available to everyone, no matter sort of what time zone they're in, whether they're whether you're in Thailand or Vancouver or Kingston, that you'd have the same sort of ability to access the materials and participate in the course. So let's open this up. If anyone has any questions about anything, feel free to either type them in the chat or unmute yourself and ask away.
I also just want to mention that Carrie and I are both available to help you look at your academic plan. So we can go through your advisement report with you. In particular, if you are looking potentially on going in an exchange, if there is an exchange happening, I'm not sure where we're at with that, but if you're looking at doing an exchange, or perhaps you didn't get all of your credits in a prior year, or you want to be taking less credits or units in the fall term because it's online, reach out to Carrie or I. We can walk you through your advisement report, advise you on how to complete your degree in the timeline that you're hoping to, and work out any bugs with you in advance. And this is really important for fourth year students that are looking to graduate in June 2021. We want to find anything that you're missing now. A lot of people tend to forget about their language units that you need. So let's look at making sure that you're registered in those courses and meeting your degree requirements now and not in March, which would delay your convocation.
One other thing that I see there's a question or two coming up. I'll just get to those and say one other thing that I'll add is that one of the things that we can't sort of as easily replicate is the sense of community that we have through people dropping by the office. We kept that DEVS lounge so that we could have a place for undergraduate students just to sit and read and chat and so forth. And obviously the DSC hold events and so forth. So that's more difficult to replicate in a sort of virtualized online way, but we're gonna try our best. So I'm already, Barbara and myself have already been chatting with the DEVS DSC reps about what we can do to build a sense of community and so forth. And we're having discussions about that, whether it's just general open discussion with myself and other faculty where we just drop by and chat. People talk about quiz nights and stuff like that. This stuff's going on anyway. And so we're just gonna think about that, and we'll, by all means, if you have ideas, run them past ourselves and the DSC. But we'll get together a sense of what we can do, and of course the regulations on in-person contact are changing, as you know, all the time, and will continue to evolve over the fall and so forth. But those of you that are here in Kingston and so forth, there may be things that we can do and the DSC can do. We'll just have to see. It's a bit premature to make any kind of suggestions about that. So in that sense, we'll be working on that, and hopefully come September we'll have a range of virtual or less virtual aspects. But of course, there's no expectation on people if they're to be in Kingston for the fall. Different people have different situations and so forth. But we'll do it. So we'll make sure that events are virtual and so forth. At the present, the restrictions we face suggest that our offices should be kept closed for the full term at the present. That might change, but at the moment the advice coming from central admin is not to open up because you create these high contact places and so forth. So we'll advise on that, and if conditions improve, there'll be time when some of us might be around the office, but at the moment we're being told to keep out of our offices so as not to create contagion points. So we're bound to do with that. this is evolving as it moves along. So there's a range of questions coming up. So the first one is, does DEVS have any plans to incorporate mandatory training or information into our courses related to Black Lives Matter, such as politics department's looking into? Good question. So first thing with the politics department, and I know the students that were pushing this, at least at the graduate level, they came and said to their department, oh my God, our courses are full of reading old white people, and mainly white men. What is going on? This is crazy. And that's been a major push, and so they take it on. I would like to think, at least, that within DEVS, that process of sort of decolonizing the curriculum at least is partially, and it's never complete, a lot further along. But obviously, you know, it's still coming. In fact, I was just talking this morning, there is a new Black Studies degree program emerging, and we're talking with them about cross-listing courses with them and talking about new initiatives with them. So this is interesting. It's just coming through. Catherine McKittrick from Gender Studies is heading this initiative. It's been on the cards for at least 18 months. That's been talked about, and it's, I mean, the timing is obviously impeccable, but this was before the recent Black Lives Matter movement and protests, etc. But this is always coming in. So we're talking with them. One of the new courses Dr. Celeste Pedri is teaching is called specifically the Decolonial Struggle. And that will be a 300 level course particularly. And obviously that's more focused on the on questions of settler indigenous questions and issues here in Canada. And that feeds into material, you know, it's like a prolongation of material that's come out of DEVS 220, Do 21, and so forth. And it provides a missing link. Before we had those courses at 200, and we had people teaching on those topics at a fourth year, 400 level, there wasn't much in between. That's why we made that higher, right? To particularly someone to look at those issues. So in that respect, we're continuing to try and decolonize our curriculum as we move along. We haven't got a specific mandate to move that in, but each year we start and we talk about this at the departmental level about, you know, what are we doing with our curriculums, etc. So we'll continue to do that. I know that some courses such as DEVS 240 are including material directly from in response to the current process into that curriculum, etc. I don't think we would mandate it across all classes, because evidently, you know, that would be a different question. We wouldn't want to try and shoehorn that aspect, but to continually work on decolonizing our curriculum is something that we're acutely aware of, and we continue to try and do. So that's broadly the situation there. David McDonald's new COVID course, no, it's going to be a 300 level class. It's not a 492 seminar. It'll be a 300 level topics course. So it'll have a title, I think, DEVS 362 or 363.
393.
Ooh. Yes, sorry, no. 393. So you know, it'll have a cap of about 100, and so that will be open to DEVS students first, and then whoever comes, and so forth. So 300 level course, etc. The prerequisite will be DEVS 100. So nothing to stop people getting in there. Laura, there was, sorry, Barbara, you
Yeah, I was just going to respond to Laura. So
please.
August 10th is the start of the registration period. August 10th up until the 17th, they've really expanded out the enrollment period for first-year students. Typically, first-year students would be on a Monday and a Tuesday, and fourth-year students would start on a Wednesday. This year, because of all of the changes, that first entire week is for first-year students. Whether they're in arts or whether they're in science, and those have two different start dates. So although it is correct, the enrollment period does start on the 10th, we do not start seeing upper year students registering until the 17th.
Okay, that's great. The question from Emma is with regards to language course requirements. Do you know how the language departments were transferring their courses online? Precisely how, I'm not sure, but I've been in a number of meetings, and I know Donato, the head of languages, quite well, and he's mentioned that they're on it, they're working on it, but obviously there is an aspect of, it's one of those where, you know, the practice takes a certain sort of in-person aspect. So, you know, there's a number of programs, languages, music and drama, for example, that have been really, oh my, how are we going to do this? And let's think about it. And they're working on it. So they are expecting to offer the full range of language courses, but the precise how they're going to translate it to online, I will leave it to them. They're the professionals. I'm not sure, but they are at work on this, like I have been for a month, because they realize there are some constraints to that kind of programming in an online format, but they're working on it. And there's lots of ways that languages have been taught through online. So it's just a case of adjusting to it and making sure those kind of things. But yes, they're definitely planning to offer us a full spectrum. Now, what some programs are doing, like ourselves, we originally had a timetable built up for DEVS, you know, fall and winter, etc. And we had to tear that up and think again what made more sense, knowing that fall was online, and with the presumption that hopefully COVID allowing, we will have at least a degree of in-person contact for classes in the winter. So we shuffled some things around. Some courses that we felt really needed in person, we moved to, you know, winter, and particularly certain other departments have done this. And so it may be that they shuffled their curriculum around. What runs in the fall and winter has changed, but I do know that languages are absolutely going to make sure that they offer their full spectrum of courses and are actively prepping them for the online aspect. AIDS, power and poverty, will it be back? Well, this is Dr. Mark Eprecht's course, and Dr. Eprecht was keen to teach his other 300 level course on South African development, which does touch some of the same material, but is obviously a more general course around development questions, development struggles in Southern Africa, rather than the AIDS, power and poverty. My hope is that we will be able to put that back on the curriculum for the following year, but there's just simply, we can only ask Mark to teach so many courses, and he's needed at other levels as well. So his 300 level course for this coming year, he was keen to redo his development in Southern Africa. Do you know if the libraries at Queen's will be open for those who are in Kingston? They are starting to open up now. They're just starting to get a sort of curbside pickup going now. And this is stage 2 of their opening. Stage 1 was purely for graduate students and researchers, when it was by demand and there was a whole form to fill in. Now they're starting to move to sort of online curbside pickup aspect. And I can only imagine that they're going to continue opening up. Obviously with social distancing safeguards, etc., and they will hopefully be, if not fully open, fully accessible for getting materials out by the fall term. So it may not be that, you know, you can just wander in and grab a desk and so forth. I'm not sure. That's going to depend on the whole sort of provincial regulations where we are, but certainly accessible for materials by the fall. For undergraduate students, yes, that is the absolute goal. And I can't imagine, given that now they're already sort of doing this rolling curbside pickup for stuff, I think it will be good and well. But, you know, I think it's a turbulent time. You can never be too sure with what we will be able to do, right? Are the DEVS eligible courses being expanded or modified at all in this coming year? Well, we continue to add them all the time. We learn about great courses in other departments, and then we make the request to say to the department, do we have your permission to make it DEVS eligible, and so forth, and never had them turned down. If there is a course that you see out there in another department that looks to your eyes like, this should be DEVS eligible, but it isn't on the list, write us, because we will consider it. Well, no promises, right? We have our own criteria and so forth. But if you think I think that should be on the list, I want to take that too. Write us, and we've done this in the past. We've had students send us a course, and we look and we say, oh, that's just been running for 2 years. Didn't know about that one, but that's brilliant. and we ask for permission, we get it on. So do that, right? If you see courses out there that look like they should be on our list, then let us know. And we'll fully consider them and so forth. And I've signed off a number of these for students, and we can sign off for the student and then go through the process of making it DEVS eligible. So by demand, our DEVS eligible list expands. And also, if we happen to notice courses that look like it should be, we review the list every year. So while we're not specifically got a program to try and expand by this many courses, whenever we see ones that look good, we put them on the list. And the most helpful thing is when students actually say, did you know this course? And I'm like, oh, that looks good. I didn't know that. No, but now we do. So there you go. And is there a possibility that classes will be offered partially in person in the fall? I'm afraid not. Queen's held on for as long as possible about the potentiality for that. And then like the vast majority of Ontario universities, the advice from health authorities at provincial level was to, let's not, because we need to plan. We need to plan, and there's all sorts of things. So the idea was to go remote in the fall, and that decision was taken. And it was not an easy decision to take. We much prefer to have the opportunity to see you in person and have those kind of discussions in person as well. However, the idea was, if we make the decision early and then everyone has time to really work on their course material, to render it into a remote delivery online format which actually works, that is considered and can achieve the same kinds of pedagogical objectives. So I'm afraid not. And partly it was for students planning. They didn't want to create a situation where there's mixed messaging of, oh, you might need to be here in the fall, but you might not. That kind of uncertainty isn't good for students who are planning, and it isn't good for us. So I mean, this is far beyond a DEVS level. This is a university-wide principal level to say fall is remote. There are a few programs where, particularly things to do with nursing and healthcare, where there is some need for in-person training, etc., where there are a few very select programs that have been given very special permission to be on campus. And that's particularly with training healthcare for COVID situations. You understand why that was met. But other than that, even at a graduate level, for the fall, it's remote for most programs, except for a few very special exceptions. So regrettably not. And believe me, we prefer it to be different, but this is where we are. We're at the mercy of a pandemic, unfortunately. Okay, Barbara, Carrie, did you have anything to add other than what I've sort of been saying?
No, I just really, Carrie and I are there to help you. So please do reach out if you have any concerns about your academic progress. We can look to help you navigate through that. So yeah, and I think the intent is to send all of the courses and the descriptions about the fourth year seminars on July the 7th. We will not know the timing of the winter 492s until later. So you will get a second email, but just so that you have the information in advance and can be looking at the courses, we'll send it out without the timetable, timing and rooms on it.
There's one more question just popped in. It's from Tess, and is Queen's planning for winter term to be in person? Yes, they are. Absolutely, that is the plan. Now, clearly there is an element of uncertainty, but the plan is that proper preparations can be made and so forth. Now, obviously, there'll probably be adjustments to this. Do we imagine that there's going to be lecture halls packed with students to the brim? no, imagine that a certain degree of social distancing may be necessary and so forth. So, but the intention is to have courses with elements of in-person teaching at the very least. Now, of course, if a vaccine arrives by the end of the year and we're all vaccinated, then maybe things would be completely as they were. But absolutely, Queen's is entirely planning on elements of in-person teaching in the winter term, etc. And again, it's an evolving situation, so there's no absolute guarantees, but that is the plan, and we are planning our courses with that in mind, that perhaps, you know, there will be tutorials, but there will be more socially distanced, spread out. So perhaps rather than having everyone in the same tutorial every week, you'll have a tutorial every other week and swap so that we can spread the rooms out and so forth. But we're at the mercy here of provincial guidelines about social distancing, and this will evolve and so forth. But the plan is absolutely to be having as many activities, as many pedagogical activities back in the classroom in some format or another in the winter term, absolutely. And again, this is a high level decision and so forth, and it will be monitored, and it will hope, you know, it will have to follow provincial guidelines about safe delivery of courses and so forth. But working within those parameters, yes, we want to be back in classrooms in the winter term. Oh, this has started a run of more questions. Will we be enrolling for fall classes only, or be enrolling for winter classes as well, August, and the same we do every year? You will enroll for the full year, including, remember those 2 spring courses that I'm trying to get you to? Oh, Barbara's shaking her head.
No, unfortunately, yeah, the spring courses will not be available when you're registering. However, if you are concerned about not getting access and you really want to be in it, you can send us an email to the devs.student and we'll keep kind of a track. But the actual mechanism for enrolling in spring classes will not be open until February.
Oh, I'm disappointed. I made a special request to the administration to make sure students could enroll for those spring courses in the fall, in the summer for the spring. But anyway, they are running. They're definitely there. 2 DEVS 300 level classes of that nature. But yes, you will choose your courses for the entire year. What I'm told is that the kind of flexibility about adding and dropping courses, and particularly the dropping courses, will be beyond normal, so that you'll be able to alter your full-term courses over a longer period of time. Because if you know, normally you have a certain number of time and then you're sort of locked in and you can't drop the course anymore, or at least we're not without penalty. Those deadlines will be extended this year because of COVID, because you need more flexibility. So there'll be an opportunity to drop courses later without penalty. I don't have the full information on what that is, but I definitely know for sure there will be extensions around ability to drop courses, and I'm sure that will be all revealed in due course. But that's for sure. But yeah, you'll choose your courses across the year as per normal.
Yeah, I can speak to that, Marcus. So fall term and multi-term courses, you'll have right up until November 2nd to drop those courses without any financial or academic penalty.
Well, there you go. November 2nd, hey? So that's a way longer ability to manage your workload and so forth, give you the flexibility and so forth. Will that also include modifications for people who don't have leases in Kingston for the winter? Frankly, I'm not sure about that. I believe the expectation is that some of those courses will expect people to be there in the winter. Now, you know, we're trying to, you know, it's a very fluid situation. We're trying to make sure that we have some courses in the winter that can run remotely at the drop of a button, including some of them like DEVS 240. We're actually just going to run it online in the winter, so that whatever happens, it will run in that format. But generally, and believe me, I have been at meetings where I've kept saying the main main constraint, and all our planning should be the thought about what students are doing with their accommodation. That's a massive issue. And, you know, the political economist to me is saying, no, it's about the housing, guys. It's not just about courses, etc. But my understanding, and Queen should be, as a general level, given guidance on this, is that when winter kicks in, the expectation is that students will be around to be able to take part in courses. But obviously, it's really fluid, and we don't know what the virus has in store for us. Kingston's been wonderful about you know, preparing, and the number of cases are extremely low at present, but that could change quickly. We don't know what the winter will bring. But the expectation is that many, if not all, courses will run with some in-person contact, which would normally be required. However, we can understand that there may need to be some exceptions. We're not in a position to really talk to that now. I'd love to be able to, but we're just not, right? We're still, believe me, it's been a roller coaster for the three of us, dealing with the constantly changing provincial and then university and then faculty of arts and science decisions about things. We've had 2 different timetables at different points and so forth. So, you know, we're trying to be flexible. We're trying to build in as much flexibility as possible into our curriculum, and we'll continue to do so, etc. But the university line is that they expect classes to be on campus in the winter. So that's their line, not ours. We'll try and build in flexibility as much as possible. Natalie's asked, when we enroll in, will winter classes be scheduled like they're in person set times? Yes, absolutely. They'll have like lectures and tutorials, although some of us are building flexibility into that. For example, DEVS 250, which I teach, I've deliberately not set a lecture, and I've set more separate tutorial workshop times so that they can probably have better social distancing in those groups, etc. And I will record elements of lecture, and then we'll do more workshop-based thing in person so that we can be more flexible. I have told every DEVS instructor to be ready for any kind of contingency in the winter. We plan for the best, we hope for the best, but we plan for every contingency and so forth. But yes, you will actually enroll as if they had a scheduled lecture and a scheduled tutorial or workshop or whatever else it is. Evidently, if COVID has other ideas for us, we will adjust, as we have done in the fall term and so forth. Wish could be more sure on what's going to happen, but we can't. But we'll do it with the most flexibility possible. We're already building in as much flexibility so that it doesn't, you know, hit us out the blue, so that we're really prepared for whatever might be necessary. And the final question I have here is, are they going to ask students to get tested if we're returning in September? I don't know, but I haven't heard that mentioned. And believe me, I've been in so many meetings at various levels over the past 2 months around these issues. No one has ever mentioned that. But if it's not my decision, but all I say is I have heard not a whisper about that. Now, I think if that kind of thing were to happen, that would be a more provincial ruling about education provision, etc. You know, I have kids in the schools here, and we're still all up in the air about what's going on from September onwards and so forth. But I have not heard a thing about testing yet. But again, it's really rapidly evolving and so forth, and maybe they will bring in some kind of testing and make it available on campus and so forth. But I have not heard about that. I'm just being very honest about that. Any other questions, or are we good? Okay, well, I hope this has been helpful. As you can no doubt appreciate, we, like everyone else, are trying to be flexible and so forth. Thanks a lot for tuning in, and you can ask the 3 of us questions by email if you have any questions, concerns, and so forth. I really look forward to seeing you either virtually, remotely in the fall, and or in person in the winter, as we all do. Thanks so much, and we will see you when we see you. And take care, everyone. Be safe.